So there is actually one issue when it comes to woke nonsense, critical race, whatever, that actually concerns me more than any other issue. And that is what is going on in elementary schools, in middle schools, and in high schools with this nonsense getting infused into the curriculum across all the different subjects, because this is not just about them changing history. They're changing English. They're even changing science. I'm telling you, if you have got kids that are school aged and you don't know what those kids are learning and you are not involved in the schools, you need to get yourself involved, or you need to homeschool as a viable alternative, because if you don't, your kids are going to go to school. There's a very real possibility they're going to go to school and be taught to hate themselves or hate their white classmates, parents, what have you. This is a very real thing, folks. I'm not messing around. I know it sounds like hyperbole, but this is what is going on. And I'm going to prove it in this video. Let's start with this article. This is from Real Clear Investigations. Post George Floyd, a wave of anti-racist teaching sweeps K through 12 schools targeting whiteness. The notices to parents began arriving fast and furious in the weeks after the death of George Floyd in late May. In dramatic, urgent language, K-12 schools across the country, both public and private, professed solidarity with Black Lives Matter and vowed to dismantle white supremacy as they scrambled to introduce anti-racist courses and remake themselves into racism-free zones. Now, I feel the need to do a little disclaimer here because we are going to get into sensitive topics. And what I'm going to say is that I don't actually think there's anything wrong with learning about the different experiences that people of all different races and genders and orientations and all the different things have in the world. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Racism is an evil that was perpetrated in this society, and that's all very, very clear. I think learning about the negative parts of our history, all the way up from slavery through Jim Crow, through the civil rights movement, that is all perfectly valid and frankly things that should be taught in schools. I was taught that stuff in schools, and it made an indelible impression about the type of era that we don't want to go back to. And there are very valid conversations to have about race in our current context. The problem with this stuff is this: when you're teaching this stuff from a critical race theory perspective, what it teaches is that all white people are evil from birth. That in and of itself is, wait for it, racist, because you are making assumptions about an entire group of people based on the color of their skin. Another problem is this, by the way, is that when you get into these curriculums that are around critical race theory, you hear about black and white. You don't hear about Asian. You don't hear about Latino. You don't hear about anything else other than black and white. That seems to be the only two categories that people are interested in. You don't even hear about, oh my God, I get questions all the time from people who are in interracial relationships saying, I hear this from, oh my God, I got one of the most heartbreaking emails from a white father that's in an interracial relationships. His kids are they're not fully black or fully white. And he said, I'm so scared that my kids are going to be taught to hate me. This is what is the problem with this. Not that you're looking at things from different perspectives, but that they are teaching that all people that fit into a certain category are fundamentally evil and only want to do harm to people in other categories. It's absurd. Anyway, let's keep going. The president of the Lower Merion School Board on Philadelphia's affluent Main Line declared to families, "We need to eradicate white supremacy and heteropatriarchy in all of our institutions." In Maine, a coastal public school district where 3.7% of the 2,100 students are African American or Hispanic, the superintendent declared war on the intentional barriers white people have built to harm black people. See? The intentional barriers that white people built to harm black people. The top administrator added, "We grieve for all black lives taken by white supremacy." Educators at the prestigious Brentwood College in Los Angeles have made more changes to the curriculum this year than in any other in the private schools' nearly 5-decade history. Teachers are introducing critical race theory, which views the U.S. from the prism of racial conflict, and assign ratings from Ibram X. Kendi, the academic and author who contends race-neutral policies are the bulwark of the white ethno-state. And I can go on and on and on with what they talk about in this article. It's a very, very long piece. I'm going to link it in the description below if you want to go read it. But what I really want to do in this video is present one example of curriculum changes that are being made at one of the most prestigious and, dare I say, expensive private schools in the country, Harvard-Westlake. Harvard-Westlake is one of those snooty private schools that like celebrities go to, or the children of celebrities. It's like Jake and Maggie Gyllenhaal went there. I think Tori Spelling went there. It's a really, really snooty private school in Los Angeles. It's so snooty, in fact, that its tuition runs $41,000 a year. Now, just yesterday, I did a video about the Ohio State University, and the tuition at the Ohio State University for out-of-state students is $33,000 a year. The tuition at this snooty private school in Los Angeles is $41,000 a year. So, of course, Harvard-Westlake is implementing an anti-racist curriculum and put together this whole PDF to talk about their curriculum changes, so we can get really, really specific with the types of curriculum changes that you're going to see coming down the line at all of the other non-snooty elitist schools, because of course it's going to start at the most snooty and most elitist school, and then it's going to trickle down into all the other schools, and because they all want to be like the big boys. So we're going to talk about what that says, but before we get into that, listen folks, I'm trying to grow my channel. I do daily content, maybe 1 or 2 videos, sometimes 3 if I'm feeling really saucy, about just news, politics, culture issues that I find interesting and want to talk about. If you want to help me grow the channel, the best way to do it is make sure you are subscribed by hitting that button right below, down there somewhere. If you think you're subscribed, just give it a double check for me. And if you really want to help me out, you can hit that thumbs up. I guess that helps YouTube recommend my content to you more, so you actually hear about it when I post new things. Or you can leave a comment, share it out with your friends. I really appreciate it. All right, let's take a look at this little anti-racism brochure. And I'm not going to read the whole thing. We're just going to go over the points that I find to be the most absurd. So in this opening letter, we must first acknowledge that Harvard-Westlake's own practices have contributed, however unintentionally, to the racism and injustice that people of color have experienced at our school. Furthermore, we cannot be content with gradually reducing the number of intensity of these experiences and gradually improving the quality of the experience of people of color at Harvard-Westlake. Instead, we must recognize that this is an urgent crisis that demands immediate adjustments as well as long-term strategic plans to ensure Harvard-Westlake becomes an anti-racist institution. This is a letter from the principal, the associate head of the school, and the director of diversity, equity, and inclusion. We define anti-racism as the active opposition to systemic racism through intentional actions, policies, and practices. This opposition must be present at the individual, interpersonal, institutional, and structural levels with understanding and commitment from all in the Harvard-Westlake community, as we all bear responsibility for the fulfillment of our mission. So what are some of the things that Harvard-Westlake is doing? Let's see. Let's get into their curriculum. Now we're going to start off with the middle school curriculum. Middle school. And I just have a couple highlights here I want to go over. So in middle school, they're going to be examining the civil rights movement in the 7th grade. I think that's perfectly appropriate. I have no issue with that. I think I learned about the civil rights movement around the same time. Redesigning the 8th grade World Civilizations course to center a non-European perspective on the 19th and 20th century. World history focus on political, social, cultural history of Africa, Latin America, East Asia, South Asia, and the Muslim world. Now, the question I had about this is, why weren't they doing this already? Why wasn't the World Civilizations course actually about the world? Okay, but here's what they're really doing. The course explores the impact of colonialism and imperialism on the non-European world and is attentive to inequities of power, wealth, privilege in every unit. So what they're really saying is what they're going to teach people is that, what they're going to teach these kids in 8th grade is that white people are conquerors out to conquer all the non-white people in the world and colonize their lands. Exploring stereotypes, unconscious bias, identity through the direct instruction activities and personal reflection in 8th grade development. So they're going to have children in 8th grade. I was 13 in the 8th grade. They're going to have them do self-reflections on their own biases, which basically is going to amount to, how have you been racist today, white student? That's usually how these things work out. Now, moving on, they're going to address the effects of conscious and unconscious bias in 9th grade biology. Apparently we're not dissecting frogs anymore in biology or other, assorted animals. We are learning about unconscious bias. All right. How about reading texts by BIPOC authors? Now, I actually have no issue with making sure that there is a wide variety of authors throughout the school curriculum. I think that makes sense. But where are they focusing the topics? Topics during this unit include identity, bias, systemic racism, restorative justice, and othering/marginalization. So it's not just that we're infusing books from BIPOC authors. It's that they're very specific types of books that are designed to make white people the bad guy. All right, how about this one? Assessing word problems in math and rewriting them to be more representative and culturally sensitive. What types of word problems were you doing in math in middle school, Harvard-Westlake? That's what I want to know. Okay, getting into upper school. I thought this next one was really funny because I saw a friend of mine, shout out to Nicole, a friend of mine the other day posted on Facebook, and she talked about a conversation with her son, and she made I think it was actually her son that made this really astute observation. He said, or she said, whoever, that the left is like the Russian Revolution, whereas the right is like the French Revolution. And I thought that was so interesting, and it made me think of that when I saw this next bullet point. Examining inequity in modern-day France and non-white Francophone, I don't know what that word is, countries around the world in upper school French classes. All right, how about covering a diverse range of Latin American countries spanning Central and South America in upper school Spanish classes? Within these countries, great attention. Again, it's not that they're covering a broader range of countries, it's that greater attention is given to inequity, for example, between indigenous peoples and European colonizers. Now, I have no problem with, children learning about like the conquistadors and what they did in South America. That seems perfectly appropriate to me. But again, it's how they frame all of this with white people, evil, bad, never do anything right. They just oppress other people that are not white. It's the framing of it that is the problem. You can teach people the history of what happened, and yes, some of the most horrible parts of the history, without constantly hammering it across every subject matter, biology, Spanish, math, all these things that say white people bad. You're going to teach kids to hate themselves. Redesigning the 11th grade U.S. history course from a critical race theory perspective, which is exactly what I just said, teaching white people that they are fundamentally evil and racist and wrong, which examines the role of power dynamics in shaping history. Let's keep going. All right, we got a whole bunch in this one. So one of the things I want to put out, these are all new initiatives that they're going to be starting. They've already been doing that other stuff. This is the new stuff. Engaging the Glasgow consulting firm for a full DEI curricular review of our program. I bet you that's going to cost tens of thousands of dollars. Teaching about the intersection of identity and racism within the criminal justice system while learning about data and statistics redesigned 7th grade. I don't know what KITS is. It's probably one of their classes. 7th grade. They're going to start teaching this stuff. Redesigning the 10th grade Life Lab course for 2021 to focus on empathy, anti-racism education, and the experiences of BIPOC in America. Again, this is your indoctrination material right here. Anytime you see anti-racist show up in high school curriculum, this is going to be teaching white kids to hate themselves. Exploring cultural appreciation and representation versus cultural appropriation at an in-depth level in performing arts. Okay, so it's in drama classes too. Redesigning the 10th grade world. Okay, oh, this one is funny just in terms of irony. Okay, redesigning the 10th grade World and Europe 2 course, including using a new textbook, Forging the Modern World, which is not a Western or European history text. So they're going to teach European history 2 using a textbook that is not a European history text. Just let that one sink in for a second. Okay, creating 2 new English courses for the 11th grade centering on questions of racial inequalities. Creating 2 new 12th grade English courses organized around themes of justice, fairness, and current cultural conversation. And, of course, requiring all new courses in the upper school curriculum redesign process to incorporate diversity, equity, and inclusion in the new structure and content. Let's keep going. Let's see. Okay, some new initiatives they're going to start for students, requiring anti-bias training, beginning with members of the upper school prefect council and middle school student council. They are going to force their students to go through anti-bias training. Their student leaders are going to be forced to do that training. They're also going to make their staff do it too. That's in this document too. But they're going to make their students, the leaders of their student body, starting in middle school, to go through this training that is harmful to adults in real life. And they're going to make kids go through this. All right. Exploring new methods for student discipline proceedings, including professional development work in the summer of 2020 on restorative justice processes, which how I read this is that white students are going to be treated differently in the student disciplinary process than non-white students, which to me doesn't really seem very fair, but okay. Keep going. And by the way, guys, I'm skipping over a lot simply because there's a lot to cover in this, but I will link to this full document in the description below if you want to go and read the whole thing for yourself. All right, they're also revamping hiring procedures, revamping our hiring process, including the use of search firms focused on diversity in hiring, ensuring DEI representation in interviewing, and bringing up strong candidates of color to campus as finalists for open positions. Now, again, I don't think that there's anything wrong with making sure that opportunities are available to everyone, regardless of race, gender, all that good stuff. What I do question is, are they going to bring people in for interviews just to say they interviewed a black person? Because to me, that doesn't seem good. First off, like schools schools in general, I would think, but certainly schools like this should probably be focused on making sure they're hiring the absolute very best candidate for the job. If that happens to be a person of color, fine. If it happens to be a woman, fine. But like to bring people along in the hiring process just to say that you did, it seems like a colossal waste of time for me, particularly if those people don't really have any hope of getting the job, or even worse yet, what if they were given the job just because of their skin color? Or let's consider this scenario too. What if they were actually the very best candidate, the most competent person in the hiring process, but then they always question whether or not they got the job based on their skin color? I mean, I would think that a teacher being hired to work at a school like this would probably be like, yeah, like that would be a pretty plum gig, I would think, for a teacher. They'd probably be pretty excited about it. But wouldn't you want to know that was based on your merit, not based on the color of your skin? I mean, maybe it doesn't matter. I would always wonder, though. New initiatives, revising the faculty and staff evaluation process, incorporating student feedback, and requiring individualized DEI work for all faculty and staff as part of their performance review. All right, let's keep going. All right, student admission. So they want to increase the percentage of students of color in the community to 55% self-identified student of color. So, really, as we know, actually it's funny, Brandon Strauch right now is the founder of the Walkaway campaign on Twitter, has self-identified himself as the first black female VP vice president or vice president elect or something like that. So I guess self-identification is really all that matters. New initiatives, requiring implicit bias training beginning in August 2020, so it's already started, for 60 members of the Harvard-Westlake community involved in the admissions process conducted by Lawrence Alexander, Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Carney, Santo, and Associates. So they're making their admissions staff go through implicit bias training. Implicit bias, by the way, has been actually, the folks who actually invented the implicit bias test at Harvard have actually come out and say, yeah, those tests don't really measure anything. So, why shouldn't we spend tens of thousands of dollars on this training? Anyway, I think that's all I had and all I wanted to point out for this, but there's a lot of stuff in here, guys. And the biggest point I want to make is very rarely do schools put together nice little brochures like this that tells you exactly what changes they're making. But you have a responsibility to find out. If you have a kid in school, you have got to take some time to really find out what they're learning, because, you know, it's funny, if you look at before and after pictures of especially women when they're in high school, and you look at them before they went to college and after they went to college, oh my God, you're taking happy, like well put together young people who just turn into like creatures from the Black Lagoon by the time that they're done with college. And that's where this stuff sits right now. It's in colleges, but they're really trying as best they can to get it into the high schools, the middle schools, the elementary schools. Black Lives Matter raised billions of dollars, billions with a B, after George Floyd's death. Where's that money gone? I think a lot of it went to political candidates, and I think a lot of it has gone to developing the curriculum that are going into these schools. You have a kid, you should be very afraid of what they're learning. All right, well, you've got the links below if you want more information. That's all I've got for this video. I hope it wasn't too depressing. I even feel a little depressed by it, but whatevs. That's all I've got for right now, guys. I'm sorry. I'll see you soon.